Hello, welcome. Today this is the Musicians Weekly number 11. And I will speak today about the consequences of atonality for practicing musicians. But first of all, I would like to say a little thing about atonality to really clarify the meaning. There are many things that are written in so-called, what I call free tonality, are normally called atonal, because many people think that tonality is the major minor system in European polyphonic tradition. But the major minor system is only one category, so to say, of tonal music. There was before modal music. Back to the origins, very archaic modal music, only monodic. It is tonal. Everything is related tension-wise, listening to it as a whole. So tonality holds together the beginning with the end. In atonality, only it's intellectually holds together from beginning to the end, or on the paper. But then when there came the break to modernism, tonality became very dissonant, and it evolved into so-called free tonality, and in many cases very dissonant free tonality. That was so-called expressionism. Also before impressionism is with very unorthodox tonality, but it is absolutely tonal. Music like Debussy or Ravel or Frédéric Delius, or also in Impressionists, Joseph Marx, Theodor Berger, all these things are tonal, related from tone to tone as a whole. In free tonality, we have the same thing, but very complicated now. So the works of Arnold Schoenberg before he went into consequent dodecaphony, the Oli Webern, Alban Berg in general more, and then many composers afterward. And of course, the German expressionism, the Berlin expressionism of these composers like Heinz Thyssen or Philipp Jarnach or Eduard Erdmann, Emil Bohnke, Max Butting, Edmund von Bork, all these people, it is Rudi Stephan before them, it is free tonality. And we have free tonality, of course, all through the 20th century into the 21st century until today. I only mention composers such as Anders Eliasson or Per-Henrik Nordgren, some of my real favorites, Tristan Curtis, Halvor Hoog from Norway. Today, a composer, of course, the French Jean-Louis Florence, and today Benjamin Attahir. I only mention now the composers, some of the composers I really love, and many, many more German composers of this generation of Eliasson, like Ulrich Stanz, like Peter Michael Hamel, like Roland Leistermeier. All these people, Heinz Winbeck and so on, wrote in free tonality. They didn't write atonal music, so things are related for your perception, that you get a thread from the beginning to the end and a consequent build-up of tension and up to a climax and back to relaxation. Now, atonality breaks with all those rules, but about atonality we have to say that there are different levels of atonality. So what is normally called atonal, starting with dodecaphony, and then having all these symmetrical systems like whole tone row and like large second, minor second, major second, minor second, major second, minor second, and all these things all these things, by the way, you find in the Thesaurus of Musical Scales and Patterns by Nicholas Lonimsky, which is the handbook for all these atonal possibilities. And it was used by John Adams, it was used by Frank Zappa, and by many, many, many more. So it is the Bible of the atonalists. But all this is basically not atonal, because the 12-tone system is a tonal system. And so they are always tonal fifth relations. So you lose tonality when there is no fifth anymore. You can have microtonality and it is tonal if there is a clear fifth. And it is the fifth, it's not the third. How can I say it's not the third? Because if you have the whole tone row, or you have the minor third row, which is not a row, it's only 4 notes and then the first one repeats. If you have these, it's atonal. There is no center. There is no development, no evolution. That is what is basic for atonality. No obvious relation between the tones. They are all things in themselves. So basically, first order atonality would be a kind of roast where we cannot hear any fifths. This is very difficult, and there are only a few tones left because our ear always creates a fifth, as in 12th tone well-tempered intonation. It's not an exact fifth, but our ear hears the fifth. And even if we go further into wrong tuning, still we hear a fifth. And from the moment we don't hear a fifth anymore, we don't have any orientation anymore. But now today I don't speak about this atonality of the first order. I speak about the atonality of the second order. And we can say of the third order. So the second order is in composition. If there is no clear relation in attention-wise between the intervals, from beginning to end, of course. And we can speak about a third order if musicians are not able to play in a way that you can experience that. Of course, if it is second order, third order is always included. But it can be tonal, but musicians are not able to play it in a tonal way. And there we are at the core problem of today. Because now many young musicians are absolutely used and grew up with atonal music. That means it makes no harmonic sense. Everything can stand with everything, and the relation doesn't mean anything. So it's sound effects basically that follow each other. It's this kind of idea like Pierre Boulez and Pierre Boulez conducting, very interesting, very exact everything, but everything a thing in itself. And going from like summarizing things, not relation-wise. And so musicians have the problem that they play this atonal music and they think this makes sense, of course. And I know some conductors, for example, who conducted a lot of Ligeti and Henze and all these things, and then they have no idea anymore, or Messiaen, it doesn't matter. Of course, hardcore avant-garde in any case, like Nono, Boulez, Berio, Xenakis, Lachenmann, doesn't matter. All these musicians, they lose the relation to tonality. And so we have today a lot of fantastic conductors rhythmically, fantastic players rhythmically. So for a conductor, it's mostly he has to be rhythmical today. And then he has to hear, of course, exactly how the pitch is. And so these things, whether an instrument enters or doesn't enter with right or wrong note, these are not musical questions. These are technical questions. So from this technical side, you will judge conductors today. But the question is, where is the music? If you don't understand a cadenza in Brahms, and you simply don't feel it, or what I say about, I wouldn't mention the name, a famous Italian conductor who is not anymore among us, but until some years ago he was. And he did in his late years some very touching Mahler symphonies and such things after a severe illness. But when he came to a piece like Pergolesi Stabat Mater, or such simple things, you hear that he has no harmonic orientation. And you hear with many, many. Today, I would say it's the absolute majority that has no idea about harmonic tension. And we really have to go back and learn that, because this was basic for all the music until Schoenberg made this step into dodecaphony. Everybody was seen as musical if she was able to correlate the music. And correlation is finally what decides whether you're a musical person. You can be a totally unmusical person, but very rhythmical and very exact ear for pitch and everything. But this can mean you are still extremely unmusical, like a robot. And so we are trained with atonal music toward being a kind of AI. And I don't mean that sarcastically. So what is today, what is of absolute importance, what is really the thing we miss in most performances is harmonic consciousness. Consciousness for the harmonic progression, not from an intellectual view, but from real listening. And that means also no concepts will help. Because, of course, you have to understand, you have to know this is a solution, this is an opening phrase, all these things. But to build it up, you have, with your knowledge in the background, but not as a dogma, you have to find out the singular way every situation works as a kind of the web of the whole. And with these things, I work with musicians on a daily basis, and I can promise you, we can find a way to find that out and to make you independent in your relation to real tonality, as it has always been and as it is today. So it is, we can say, the art of tonality, of feeling tonality, of understanding tonality, is a lost art. And it has to be rediscovered. And I invite you to join me, and we go and search for these things. And of course, looking back, you can listen to all these great masters of the past. And now you can ask yourself, why are there so many great musicians in the past who have such a kind of unique flair in the way they make the music? And why they have such an unfolding continuously of some large architecture? And today we have, of course, phenomenal orchestra playing on a level that has never been before. We have perfection from the instrumentalists on a level that has never been before in this majority of musicians. But we have lost a lot of what made us go to music in the first place. And so we will rediscover that. You are invited, and see you again, and think about it. Best wishes.